Hey everyone, Cynics here. I've done a lot of videos talking about faces, but I think it's about time we tackle the behind. So let's dive into some butts. The first thing I'm going to talk about is just going to be shapes, which really just refers to basic anatomy. So a lot of the curves and angles you're going to have in the lower section of your bodies is going to be from the pelvis. So the pelvis is just the bone that kind of cradles in all of your guts. And it also connects your spine to your legs with your hip joints. So those are all going to be the important things that give you your angles and your shapes. So the widest area, usually on your standard kind of female figure, is at the hip joint, where the leg kind of ball and socket joint meets up with the pelvis, and that's going to give you your widest area, and then it's going to go upward and narrow down a little bit into the upper hip bone, and then above that you'll have the waist, which is the thinnest area. So now I'm just kind of doing a side view, trying to keep the kind of lines going pretty much even with the other one. So you'll see here I have the hip bone. It's kind of angled at a slight tilted forward angle, and then I have the lower abdomen, which actually comes out in front of the hip bone. So once again, the pelvis is kind of cradling this stuff, and it all just kind of spills out in front. So you have this nice bean shape if someone is standing upright. The back of the bean is obviously because the spinal cord has a nice curve to it, and the front is just the lower abdomen and just the front of the body curving around and meeting up nicely with the butt in a kind of nice flowing line. So I think that's about it. You have the guts there in the front. Like I said, it always looks good when they're coming forward a bit. You don't just want your leg coming straight up into the body. You want that kind of look like things are in front of each other. But anyway, the next thing we're going to talk about is going to be weight. So if you're just going to draw a half circle, you can see the one on the left, it's very static, very industrial feeling. But if you give it some weight, make it feel like it's being sucked down by gravity, suddenly it's far more organic. So that's very important anytime we're doing gestures. We want everything to look extremely organic. And I think one of the body parts that actually shows gravity and weight the most is probably the butt, because you'll get these nice creases on any leg that is bearing the weight of the person. Say if you're standing on one leg and standing up straight, you'll probably get a lot of creasing in the whole butt area right under the butt cheek. So you can see there that is a load-bearing ass cheek. You can tell because it has that strong crease under it. And over here, I'm just drawing a quick little example. If you were, say, leaning forward, you wouldn't have all that weight on the back. So even though you're still being propped up by your legs, you're not going to have the creasing underneath. And I'll just do a couple quick examples right here on the side. So you can see this first one on the left is an example of kind of what a butt might look like if the weight was evenly distributed among the left and right leg. And the next one is going to be if all the weight is on the left leg and the right leg just really doesn't have any weight on it. So maybe you're leaning off to the left side or something like that. And the next one is going to have the weight on the right leg. And this is kind of like a mid stride type thing. If you're walking, this is like right before you switch your weight. You'll have a lot of your weight on the right leg. And maybe the left leg is just about to come back to the ground, but it's up in the air. So you have all that creasing. And the last thing I'll show on this page about weight is just how things look when they're sitting down. Because then you have a lot of, squishing going on, as the butt cheek is very soft, obviously, and it'll be kind of crunched up a little bit. So the curves will be a lot more severe at the bottom and kind of sag down into that severe curve. So that becomes a bit more dramatic. So all this stuff, it all relates to weights and gravity and that kind of deformation that occurs. And you can see how important it is to kind of show that with the butt cheeks. If you're going to be seeing the butt will tell you everything you need to know about the weight and balance of a pose. So Anyway, there's one last thing I should mention, and that is the difference between female and male, because all of these have been kind of female based characters so far, and that is really just because everything's more exaggerated, so I thought it would be good for teaching. Obviously, if things are exaggerated, it's a lot easier to see what's going on, and females tend to have the wider hips and the bigger butts and everything like that, so it makes it good for teaching. But you can see all the principles are generally the same. The hip isn't as wide, it's a lot narrower on a male, and the back is a lot wider. So these are completely hugely exaggerated, but nonetheless, you can easily tell that one's female and one's male just from looking at the shapes. Even though they're really angular and simple shapes, they do a good job of selling the figure. So I think that's about it for the lesson portion of the video. Now let's just take a crack at making some actual drawings and paintings. So let's see what we can do. The first one I'm gonna do is just gonna be, I don't know, something kind of like a 3/4 view, maybe some weight distribution on the back leg. It's interesting when I've been doing life drawing or figure drawing, I often find it's easiest to actually start with the kind of whole lower abdomen or the butt area. And when you have the butt and when you have it accurate, you can actually place the legs based on it. That's all the information you need. The legs are going to be a certain way just based on looking at the butt. You can tell where the weight is, you can tell where they're leaning, and it's just kind of nice to have that core that you can build out from, like a tree, branching off into the legs, branching off into the upper body and the arms and the head. So anyway, I have my butt there. I drew some contour lines just to kind of show how it was moving in and out of space, and that's sometimes a helpful thing to do when you're doing anatomy is have those contour lines. Yeah, I kind of got behind here a little bit, but you can see I just made another real quick gesture on the right side. I'll get back to that. But anyway, I'm doing some painting now, and I decided I was just going to do this real fast and simple, so it's all just on one layer above the line art. And the main thing I wanted to do was bring in a lot of hue variation, and that's just really personal taste. So I talk a lot about hue variation in my skin tones, but I should mention that that's just me and how I like to do things. I think you'll find that style is something that is created by choosing what to exaggerate. So for me, my style might be, somewhat exaggerating the colors in the skin. And that's fun to me. That gives me a lot of fun with style. But maybe it's, say for anime, it's exaggerating the size of the eyes or the size of the chin to be smaller. And, personal style, it all just comes down to exaggerations. Things can be elongated, they can be shorter, whatever. But anyway, you can see this painting is going along nicely. I gave her a really pale and kind of sickly looking skin tone. But this blue in the background will help pop it from that really neutral, warm background, which is kind of similar to the skin tone. So you don't want that. You want things to pop off the page a little bit. But you can see I added a lot of redness to the fleshy areas, and I'm trying to add a lot of saturation to anywhere where there might be bounced light between the legs or between the butt cheeks or anything like that. So even like really close in there, right on the butt crack, you can see on the right side, there's like a strong little highlight. I guess you can call it the booty bounced light, but that's just kind of exaggerated for the purposes of art. But nonetheless, you'll always get that bounced light coming off any objects that are close to each other, especially on forms and anatomy. But it's fun to exaggerate that stuff. It gives you a lot of room to play with things and make them your own. But anyway, I think that's about it. I color corrected a little bit just so it wasn't looking so sickly. But now I decided that, okay, I've done some painting. Maybe I should do something cool that I can make into a 3D image for the final kind of 3DS thing that I like to do on my videos. So as I was just trying to think of poses where the butt was coming forward, maybe it can be sticking out of the screen. And you can see there's just a ton of foreshortening and perspective stuff going on, where the body feels like it's really getting smaller at the legs as they're going away from camera, or away from the focal point, really. I guess this is a bit of a fisheye effect. But nonetheless, I wrote nope on those just because they seemed way too, I don't know. It's hard to make a pose where the butt is like sticking out. That doesn't seem slightly suggestive. So nonetheless, I thought I would just do a simple neutral pose and that would be fine. We can take what we've learned so far and just use something that's very standard and, I don't know, practical, I guess, for our applications. So here we go. I'm going to do a darker skin tone this time, at least start darker. And once again, just focusing on bringing in some, I don't know, I tried to bring in some yellower tones on the upper body, just to get away from the redness that was going to be in the lower body. And kind of similar to a face where you have different colors going in different areas. Yellow seems to be more appropriate to the kind of around the ribs and everything. You can get those yellower tones. But once things are a lot more fleshy, say around, the thighs or the butt, you tend to get those redder tones. And once again, anywhere where there's bounced lights, like, things might be close to each other, I try to bring in as much saturation as I can just to really make things have a lot more interest to them. I don't know. I don't find super realism to be that interesting, but I do like this kind of loose impressionism. But you still need something else. You can't just be loose. You want to bring in something else. So you bring in a little impressionism of what the colors actually do. So things get more saturated than they normally would be, and it just seems a little bit more interesting. So once again, the brightest highlights are where light is bouncing off, say the bottom of the butt cheek and the top of the thigh. And you can see the finished illustration here. I kind of zoomed through everything. But yeah, I think that's about it. I was pretty simple with this. I think it was helpful though. You can see two very different skin tones, but use the same basic color patterns of having the yellows and the reds and the oranges. Oranges, that's a hard word to say. Hopefully this was useful in some way. Hopefully your butts will have more weight to them. That's really the key thing anytime you do a gesture is just you can show with just one quick little line is really show where the weight is being distributed in the body. But that's going to be it. You can check out the 3DS image here at the end. And it's not super interesting, but nonetheless, it is a 3D butt for you guys. So that's it. Thanks for watching.